is the official one or not. I don't really know. Yeah. Oops. Uh-oh. My clip fell off. There. Is that better? Very good. Okay. The hush falls over. Well, friends, welcome. It's great to be in this space, right? This is my first time in here doing any kind of talking or leading. And so thanks to all those who contributed, right? Many of you, many of us, to have this nice space here. And nice to be invited. Alex asked me to do this probably last October or something, sure, I'll do that, and then now it's here, so, a lot of prep for that. So let me welcome everybody. And I know some of you purchased the book, which is great. If you want to get the book, not very expensive, right? $7. What a deal, right? I'll probably have to call Tyler or email him and let him know that we're doing this class. So he'll be glad to hear that. And we'll talk about that. So we should let's start with the word of prayer. Let's pray. Gracious God, for this day we're grateful, opportunities we've had in it to be your people in the world, to serve your purposes of love and justice in our daily living. We thank you for this opportunity to be back in this space for our Wednesday evening class, for our Engage and Encounter class, for Tyler Mayfield and his scholarly work and his commitment to you and to the work of your church, to biblical studies, that we can read his material and be encouraged in our faith, especially as we explore religious pluralism and how we can be engaged with those of different faith traditions and how that can strengthen our own faith and also contribute to the common good of this, your good creation. So bless us and keep us in our time together these several weeks as we explore this. And for all of us, we are grateful through Christ our Lord. Amen. Hello to all those in camera land also who are watching by live stream. I don't know do we know how many that is? We might know later, right?
Yeah. Camera land, yeah.
Well, those who are, I want to wave to those. And I hope you don't mind if I sit a little bit. I really prefer to. Hello, Elaine. Welcome. Please, welcome. So I'd just like to start. I went online and found some pretty amazing pictures of different symbols of different faith traditions, and you see some of those up there. The next slide is actually a little bit. You thought it was? Yeah, it looked like a horoscope thing, didn't it? Yeah. This slide's a little bit better. So I didn't know the Buddha symbol looks a bit like a captain's wheel on a ship, right? But the yin and the yang of the Taoism symbol there. So this was just a slide on the internet, and pretty amazing to see those different symbols of various faiths in our world. So, okay. So the book is by Tyler Mayfield, and this is his pedigree. He's the A.B. Rhodes Professor of Old Testament and director of the Grawemeyer Award. The Grawemeyer Award is given jointly by the University of Louisville and Louisville Presbyterian Seminary to a religious writer, and they award that every year. And he directs that program. And many of you got the book, $7, a pretty good deal. This is what he looks like. I love this picture, but that's like the yearbook picture, right? It looks like it belongs in the seminary catalog. This is his Facebook picture. Isn't that great? So I just love that. That's Tyler, right? Very young. His wife is I think he also is UCC. His wife is UCC pastor. They have 3 wonderful kids. And if you notice, if you have the book, this one is dedicated to Taft. He writes a book. He tries to write a book a year, so he says, and he just writes them in honor of his children. So I don't know. He has 3 or 4 or 5 out, so he's probably just repeating. So this one, just is there for Taft. That's one of his kids. He's on Facebook. If you want to become his friend, you could say you're reading his book. I'm sure he will welcome you to be in his Facebook page. Just a really, really fun guy. Just look at that picture. Looks like he's in a mosque, I think, right? Because those look like kneeling pads.
When I saw that picture, I wasn't so sure I was going to read the book.
After you saw this picture, yeah, a little scary. What's that? That's this author, Tyler Mayfield is his name. Yeah, just a really good guy. Of course, I didn't have him. He was at Louisville Seminary now. Both my daughters had him for a professor, right? Professor of Old Testament. So it was quite. This is the book, and I thought we would listen and watch the song. Okay. Anybody remember singing this song in Sunday school? Father Abraham had many sons. So that was, so he's kind of tweaked that. When we lived in Syracuse for a while, Katie was a little baby. We brought her to a preschool affiliated with the University of Syracuse, and they changed it to the Abrahams had many children had the Abrahams. So it's like more inclusive, right? I'm like, how about that? Instead of Father Abraham, you need a mother too, obviously, right? So you just, the Abrahams. So can you click that so we could watch that video? And you can stay seated, and it's kind of jazzy. There'll be a commercial first, probably. So just watch the commercial. Hopefully it's appropriate. Oh, it's Adobe Acrobat, okay. So move if you want, it's kind of a cool, you can move this way.
Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Right arm, left arm, Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Right arm, left arm, right foot, left
Kind of like an
foot.
early
Father Abraham
exercise, you know?
many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Right arm, left arm, right foot, left foot. Nod your head, turn around. Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Right arm, left arm, right foot, left foot. Nod your head, turn around, jump up and down. Clap your hands, stomp your feet, say amen, 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 amen. Jump up and down, clap your hands, stomp your feet, say amen.
Get ready.
Now sit
Sit down. Isn't that great? And that's exercise in the morning, or how you get the kids to be active and then sit and have the lesson, right? So thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, the next, we can skip the next one there, whatever that is. So, I could do that, right? There we go. Okay, so thanks, Jonah. So that's the song. And many of us probably knew that song or grew up singing that song. And we want to make efforts to make it more inclusive. So Tyler does that, still sticks with Father Abraham, but calls many, many children, right? So I took some words from the introduction to kind of get us started with our conversation tonight about this. Later, we'll dive into some of the actual biblical stories, but this is more intro material. And some of you read this. You read this in the introduction. 1955, Idlewild Airport in New York dedicated the second airport chapel in the nation. And it was a Catholic chapel named Our Lady of the Skies. Anybody know there is a chapel here at O'Hare, right? Has anybody been there or checked it out or know anything about it? I wonder what the first, I should research. what is the first chapel in the country, right? But so the airports did this, right? New York City is a pretty Catholic area, right? So there was a Catholic, probably the diocese gave some money, and the airport authority said, let's have a chapel for travelers, and so they named that. So this is 1955. Some of us were here in 1955. Some of us were not. Okay, some of us were not. Okay, I was not. Okay, I was around in 1996, certainly. 1966, they renamed it the John F. Kennedy Airport. And they opened it up a little bit, right, to added a Protestant chapel and a Jewish synagogue in the airport, right? So 11 years later, Tyler says, thereby affirming the mid-20th century understanding of religious diversity in America. Now, if you read the book, you know the answer, but what would be the level of religious diversity in America, the perceived level of religious diversity in America in the 1960s? You were either Catholic or Protestant or maybe Jewish, and that was it. I mean, that was my understanding, right? I had, you know, growing up friends, two friends, one of them Jewish, so we would go with him to synagogue and prayers. His family had Seder, so that was kind of my view of I was Presbyterian, obviously, had some friends who were Catholic, and then had some friends who were Jewish, and that was like it, right? Was all we had. So those are now. Capital C here, right? Some of you were in the class upstairs on Sunday morning, and we talked about the creed that Alex is preaching on, and we talked about the Holy Catholic Church, and that's a small c, right? Not the Roman Catholic Church, but the universal, the church in the world, right? So small c. And that was it. That was my understanding, probably a lot of our understanding of religious diversity, right? Now, wonderful stories about that we could tell. I remember in my years, I may have told this, in my years in Louisville, we would have a lot of ecumenical services with the Catholics, Lutherans, the Methodists, Southern Baptists, you know, and we got to know one another, and so there'd be stories at the coffee time after the Thanksgiving service, and one of the women would say to me, Ken, you know, she grew up Catholic, my mother made me, the Presbyterian church was in town, we would walk home from school, she made me cross the street and go down a block and then walk back and then keep going home so as to avoid walking right in front of the Presbyterian church, you know, because she might catch it, you know, she might become, God forbid, a Protestant, right? And that was mixed marriages back in the day. You remember a mixed marriage back in the day was a Protestant and a Catholic, right? So that's kind of the milieu or the situation where I grew up and others of us as well, very kind of restricted that way. So, I mean, she was laughing about it, but this is what her mother, you know. And I'm sure there are other stories. My mother, as a young woman, was invited to sing at a Catholic wedding. The priest said, no. You know, you're Presbyterian, you can't sing. And then the bride said, we're not going to pay you the honorarium for doing the wedding. Suddenly the priest changed his mind and allowed, and I don't know how that's apocryphal story or not, but that's how my mom tells it. You know, but that's what it was. You know, he was insisting that it only be Catholic, only Protestant, or only Jewish. Okay. 2001, so another 40 plus years later, right? 40. Interfaith Chapel is added, and that is primarily for Muslim travelers and for airport employees, many of whom were Muslim, okay? And so Tyler says that the expansion of the airport chapels at Kennedy Airport parallels the growth of religious diversity over the past 70 years in our country. And I think it's a pretty accurate statement, right? We've seen so much more growth in religious diversity, religious pluralism in recent years, and he thinks that's a good kind of parallel to what we see in the perceived growth of religious diversity in the country. So we are now a nation of people with a full range of commitments, and he does this alliteration here. See? Buddhists and Baha'i. Anybody been to the Baha'i temple here? I mean, one of the most gorgeous, you should go sometime, and one of the most gorgeous pieces of architecture ever, right? And you go, they'll give you a tour, see their shops, and you will try to give an offering. Anybody tried to give an offering there when you're there? They won't accept it. I took our group of women when I was pastor at Carter Westminster. Let's go. So we get in the church van and we go. I thought, oh, we'll leave a donation. They accept no donations from non-Baha'i people. Pretty impressive. We would accept a donation, right? I'd accept a donation, but not the Baha'is. We tried. I tried to send them a check. No, we won't accept it. You know, so Buddhists and Baha'is, Muslim and Methodists, Hindu and Humanists, Janists and Jews. I don't know if we get any Presbyterians and P, and there may not be a P, but anyway, that was his alliteration for these different Pentecostals. Thank you. Presbyterians and Pentecostals.
He was trying to do it with a Christian or
And a non-Christian, so Presbyterians and pagans. Pagans, pacifists. Yeah, that would work, pacifists, right? So that's how he does it. So Americans can no longer be sorted into three spiritual categories, like we said years ago, right? You were Catholic, Protestant, two branches of Christianity, and Jewish, right? Now, we are living, and I put these parentheses in, we are living in one of the most religious diverse nations in the world. He doesn't have the parentheses. I added those from very recent stuff I've read, I think from the Pew research people, that other countries are getting close to America in terms of religious diversity, right? The pluralism of religions in the country. But we are certainly one of the most religiously diverse nations in the world. That's overwhelming. That was not the case, right, years and years ago. But it now is, we're a global village, right? We're expanding. There's so many more, What's that?
We were like, okay, like, if you were Protestant,
Right.
or Lutheran, or whatever,
Or that group?
you know where you belong, like, with your ancestors, even though they never believed in anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think we years ago, it was much more clear in our minds, in our perception, that we had these kind of three groups. But now that's just expanded, so much more, And I want to hear some examples from you all about that. So, and then he says, God's concern for all people compels us as Christians to respond to this level of growth in diversity in our communities and in our neighborhoods. So religious diversity is a reality we cannot ignore or passively observe. I think a lot of us probably passively observed it, right? And we know some folks over there might be Muslim, some folks over there might be Buddhist, but we are with folks who are in these various traditions. So let's just stop a minute. Anybody have any, I heard one at supper tonight, examples, stories, neighbors, co-workers, friends, maybe daughters-in-law or sons-in-laws who are from other religious tradition besides yours? Please, Lana.
My husband was born in Egypt, raised Muslim.
Okay.
Until one of your was 16 when John converted and was baptized in.
So he became a Christian. He grew up Muslim, became Christian. Okay, yeah.
God forbid anybody ever in Egypt find out.
Well, no, that's right. No, we don't want that, right? Because sometimes that's distressing. Yeah.
Raising my children in the 80s
Mm-hmm.
in a very affluent white neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
was very difficult because they were mixed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they were not treated the same as other kids.
Wow. So you had some real racism there, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
It was, it had been quite an experience.
I bet it was painful. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess pain makes me angry, so.
Sure. Exactly. Well, it wasn't fair. Right. It wasn't fair. Yeah. Anybody else? Co-workers, friends? Please, in the back. Yeah.
One of my best friends is Hindu,
Okay.
but I also am part of the interfaith group, so I
Okay.
have Muslim friends. A lot of the refugees I work with are Muslims, all three different branches of Islam.
Okay. So yeah.
Ismaili,
Isbali, Shia, and Sunni. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
and the Fulbright scholars I work with, they have a whole range.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
like you were talking at dinner about food, you learn very quickly when you have an event with this kind of group, what is not.
That's right. Right. Yep. Careful about different foods. Yeah, yeah. Jerry, please.
Well, I know a Muslim family, and
Okay.
let me tell you, they are Spartan.
Yeah.
No clutter.
No, I bet. Yeah, right. Exactly. No clutter. Right, right, right. Anybody else? Co-workers, friends, neighbors? Amy? Your psychiatrist is?
In Northfield, her name is Jane,
Mm-hmm.
but she's a Reformed Jew.
She's Reformed Jewish, or she's Jewish.
She wears normal.
Yeah, right, right, right. It's a Reformed Jew. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How about many of our doctors today, right? I mean, great to, oh my goodness, yeah, Ken.
Well, as I was telling you at dinner, we've got some very good friends who are Jewish, and for the last 25 years or more, we've done dinner with them on Monday, Thursday. And this year, we were also invited by a Turkish friend we know to have the iftar dinner on Friday, this Friday or Saturday.
Yeah. And say more about the iftar dinner for folks who don't.
During Ramadan, they fast every day. At the end of the day, they have a huge meal. It's called the iftar meal. And once the Turkish center that's here in town has a huge iftar dinner, at least once during Ramadan.
Wow.
Yes. So it was really interesting. We sat with a Islamic couple on one side of us and on both sides of us, actually. And we had a good talk about the different traditions around the Holy Week.
That's awesome. How about the food? I'm curious. Anything, meat?
Yes, we had a chicken dish.
So there was meat, so because some would not have meat, right?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
There was a chicken dish and rice and
okay,
vegetable,
yeah.
and of course the date, which they, that's what they break their fast with every day, is high energy sugar free.
Oh, ooh, love it. Yeah, dates, right? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, Joe, please. Yeah.
Our daughter-in-law is Jewish.
Your daughter-in-law is Jewish. So there's a mixed. That would be called a mixed marriage. I don't know if we have to drop that, but that's right. Even more than a Protestant and a Catholic. Yeah.
She talks about herself as being the most un-Jewish Jew.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
She won a baking of bacon.
No, a bacon.
She won it first place. This University of Chicago.
Yeah.
Somebody does
How about that?
of the recipe
Yeah.
created for bacon. So
Yeah.
we never worry about what.
So you don't worry about kosher or yeah.
I try for Easter we have ham.
Oh yeah, she's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
But I try to put a hard-boiled egg on the table. I've left the door open. Also, I try to, do a few things.
That's great. Why the door open?
We always have I don't know, to let.
Is that for Elijah to come, maybe? For Elijah to come. Yeah. Yeah.
And I always give her a pizza matzah.
Oh, you're very good. Yeah.
And she really appreciates it.
Trying to honor that tradition.
That for some reason impresses her that
Yeah.
I knew to do that.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, being accepting and welcoming. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Your family's United Nations, so you have a lot of different people.
Because I mean, everybody, because since I'm Presbyterian, my other sister's Baptist, the other one's Buddhist.
So you have some Buddhists too. Wow, you're very interreligious family. Interreligious family, for sure, for sure. Okay, we'll have more time to share some of those. So, go ahead, go ahead.
Sikhs out in Palestine.
Yeah.
That's one of their major things, basically, for keeping people at home. They welcome
The Sikhs, yeah, yeah. How wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
It's quite an interesting.
They want you, oh, you all come. Yeah, you all come.
The similarities are somewhat stronger than you would expect.
Really? How about that? How about that? All right, excellent. So a lot of it, just amongst our group here, for sure. So he has this wonderful phrase, we've been given the gift of living alongside wise and faithful people, right? That other people in our lives are a gift to us, right? Not other, maybe other different tradition and different beliefs, but they are not other, they are wise and faithful people who have a different system of beliefs than we have, but that still means, hopefully, that they are wise and faithful people, right? Trying to contribute to the common good, let us say. We'll get to that in a minute. So, so we talked about some examples and stories. How about some tension points? This is not in the book. This was some of my thinking and my experiences. We've shared some positive examples religious diversity in the world, in our lives, in our doctors we go to, within our families. How about some points of tension or some maybe conflicted stories about any of your experiences with other traditions? Other than Christian, obviously, or maybe within the Christian tradition, I don't know. So none of that comes to mind? Please, Sue, yeah.
Our daughter-in-law is Catholic.
Okay.
It counts in that.
Well, sure, within the, yeah,
They were married in the Catholic Church.
right,
To avoid a conflict with her mother, we were told.
okay,
So they had a very simple wedding. They did not go to Mary to be blessed with.
oh, that's a tradition, right? You go to the altar of repose where Mary is, right, over to the side, yeah,
But
yeah.
they raised their kids in the Catholic faith, and when we go for Christmas to their house, which we always do, they
Mm-hmm.
live in Houston, we always go to the Catholic Church.
Go to Mass,
Yes.
yeah. How did you all deal with having communion at Mass?
Well, I asked when
Yeah.
our grandson was baptized on the Saturday evening service.
Okay.
And I asked the priest, who was the same one who married them, if, because this was a special day, I would be allowed to take communion there. And he said, no, you really shouldn't.
Wow.
But you can go up.
Wow, can I ask, what year was this, Sue?
1997.
So not 50 years ago, gracious me, yeah. So that's a point of conflict. You'd like to take communion. I saw one of you did this, right? You would walk up and cross your, mix with the microphone, and that would mean you want a blessing, right? Yeah, yeah. Or sometimes you're just told, I remember at a funeral, our church custodian woman, her husband died, Catholic, she's Protestant. We went to the, a whole bunch of us from the church, from Beulah went, and we were basically told no. I mean, in the midst of the service, And I thought, if I get up, other people are going to get up from the church. So I just stayed there. Yeah, please, Sue, yeah.
When I was going to Loyola, I would always go up.
Yeah,
Never asked anyone,
you just went boldly. Boldly go where no one has gone before, right?
We
Yeah,
were told no at our 8th grade grandson's
yeah.
confirmation.
So even within the family, right? Even within the family, there's some tension,
When I
yeah.
served at the hospital, at
Yeah.
the site, I served alongside a Catholic priest, and they'd always do communion, and he'd always skip over us.
Skip over you, yeah.
He literally would skip
He
over
knew,
us.
right?
I'd be
Yeah,
like, these people aren't Catholic either, so I don't know why.
What are you-
they're-
yeah.
why you think that
Yeah,
we're okay
yeah,
and
yeah,
we're not.
yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly. And then there are some glimpses. So I'm at the cathedral in downtown Syracuse, right? I'm as Presbyterian as I could be. I had my robe on, my stole, I was doing a wedding. He was a member of my church, the groom, the bride was Catholic. I already, at the rehearsal, the bride asked if I could hold the cup for communion, and I knew that was not going to fly. So the priest said no, and here's why, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, so the wedding happens. I give my part. The priest does his part of the wedding. Then there's communion. So I'm sitting over there. The priest is here. People are coming forward to eat. He looks over to me and kind of goes, like, gestures like, want some, So I'm like, yeah. So I walk over, and I'm handed the host, and I dip it in, and I'm like, wow. I mean, I'm as Presbyterian as you can be at that moment, right? And yet this priest, younger, a little more ecumenical maybe, right, says, you all come. So there's hints of this. I think age is a factor and so on. Yeah, Sue.
I was at a wedding in the 80s, a Catholic wedding, and the priest said, may all of God's children celebrate the
Oh,
Eucharist
yeah.
together someday. I want to say, I'm not busy now.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. And I didn't tell you, Alex, but after the Thursday evening, Holy Thursday, Monday Thursday service, you say often, I say often, this is not the Presbyterian table, this is the Lord's table. You are welcome. Diana in the choir, Diana and Dan, she says, after we're chit-chatting after, she says, Ken, I'm so glad you say that. She's Orthodox, her family. The table is not open. You must be Orthodox to have the table. So she is so appreciative of that. So make sure we always say that, because there's somebody out there that doesn't really feel welcome. We say, this is the Lord's table. And I got this right? Do this in remembrance of me. Remember I mentioned that in the sermon that night. So it's open to all, which is our tradition, right? But not all the traditions. So one tension point for me, this was not that long ago. I'm being interviewed by the session of the Carter Westminster Church in Skokie. This would have been October, what Judy got here in 2015. So this has been October of 2015. I'm looking for work, still living in Louisville. And I say, I'm really impressed to want to come here to be your interim pastor. I said, you have a Jewish synagogue right down the street. And I know this is a very interreligious community. There's a lot of Jewish people live here. And there's, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists. So I said, I'm excited. I've always been kind of ecumenical in my thinking. Would be very excited. It'd be like a plus for me to come and be your pastor, your interim pastor. One of the elders on the very conservative side says, well, I hope the only reason you would want to, be involved ecumenically is that so you could convert these people to Christianity. And I just kind of pause, because that'd be the only reason in this man's mind that I would engage in interreligious, so that I could save them, right? And his name is Calvin. He's since gone to glory. I said, well, Calvin, I have a different view of that. That would not be my primary reason, but I appreciate your thinking on that. I was looking for a job, so you don't want to say that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. So you want the work, right? So I just kind of gently disagreed. Other elders around the session were aghast. I could just see on their faces, like, can't believe he said that. So that church, as you know, at the time had a lot of tension with different factions of Assyrian people, the Iranian Assyrians and the Iraqi Assyrians. A lot of tension there in their life. So that was like, oh boy, I better tread carefully here. Of course, Skokie is a wonderful ecumenical and interreligious community. All the traditions. All the ones that were there. Very big mosque there in Morton Grove. Of course, several synagogues, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Baptists, Methodists, and so on. But that's the view of some folks, right, within our family, within the Christian church, that the reason for interreligious faith or interreligious activity is to convert. Because the thinking is, we have it, you don't, and you need to come to us to get it. Now, that's not my thinking. It's not Alex's thinking. It's not, this church's thinking. But that is out there within the Christian family, My sister-in-law, Judy's sister, would be very much probably in that camp, she's not sure about all of us even, I think, So there's three, I won't tell you. Yeah. Judy's sister, Jean, she's very conservative theologically, and I never asked her. She probably would say, well, that's, we have it, and we'll talk about that more next week, this kind of exclusivistic theology. We have it, you don't, and therefore you need us. Yeah, Lana.
When my boys were in grade school, other friends were going to Presbyterian church, and I said, oh, yeah, sure, you can go to Sunday school with your friends. Because John and I, we really strived hard to teach them both religions. We would
Sure.
celebrate the holidays of both sides, and man, I got expensive. But anyhow, they went, and they were happy to go to Sunday school. And then they came home one day, and they were never going to go back, and
Uh-oh.
it changed their lives completely, because their teacher told them that their grandmother and grandfather in Egypt were going straight to hell because they
We're not Christian.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, they do believe in Jesus, just not the way we do.
Not the way we do, right. Jesus is mentioned in the Quran. Yeah.
That stayed with them through
Well, sure, what an awful thing. Yeah.
One boy ended up becoming Catholic because the Catholics had changed the ideology
Okay.
10 years ago or 16 years ago when he married a Catholic girl, and they were more inclusive.
Okay. Yeah.
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 How old were they when they were in grade school?
Yeah, that's an awful thing. But so that's the exclusivist. In other words, we've got the message, we've got the truth. Sorry, you don't, and you better come along. And that's really in terms of that's ecumenism. It's certainly interreligious, even worse, right? That's the points of tension. What's that?
It was coming from us.
Sure, from a Sunday school teacher, nice volunteer who was, yeah, schooled, who was,
The same as
right, exactly, yeah, yeah. Jan, please.
I think I appreciate the point that you're making, Ken, and I would want to also add that thinking comes, I believe, out of an understanding that if you don't know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then you're in
Trouble, yeah, yeah,
And-
yeah.
And it might seem to us perverted and exclusivistic, but if it comes out of the heart that says, I don't want you to be lost.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would think, hopefully there's a genuineness there, right? Genuine concern for the other as opposed to just over against. Yeah.
I'm just.
No, I agree, you know,
That could be
Right.
what's going on.
in their heads, right? They're very concerned.
Sorry about the whole thing, but.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, Jan. I think that is the concern of many, and probably Jean. You know, my sister, she comes here sometimes, so don't jump on her when you see her. But I was just thinking about another story. It'll come to me about that. It'll come to me. Yes.
I was wondering, why is it okay when a mother has a child,
Mhm.
they're like baptized like right away? I don't understand.
Well, some traditions will do that, you know.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially for the Catholic.
Right, especially with 2 weeks. You only have 2 weeks in some understanding. Well, they're just afraid, right? It comes out of a level of fear. Katie is born. Today's your birthday, by the way. Katie, our oldest, is 36, so 36 years ago, plus a couple weeks. Judy and I had another birth coach. We had our friend Mary Grace, good Irish Catholic woman, pastoral care person, and she was with us when the kids were born. And she was going to watch Katie for us. Judy and I were going on a date after, you know, she had the baby. And her mother says, now, Mary Grace, while you're there at the house, walk Katie over to the kitchen sink and take some water and baptize her. You know, just go ahead and do that. And she's like, Mother, baptism was scheduled for September. This would be like April, May, early May. Mother, everything's fine. Because there was in the Roman Catholic tradition the understanding that if a baby died without being baptized, anybody know? They would go to limbo, and then it had to be prayed out of limbo. Well, it's a good question. I have no idea. But anyway, we don't need to worry about baptism as an emergency, right? That's not our understanding. But that is the understanding of some. It really is the understanding of some. So this whole idea of interreligious diversity, very positive for many of us, but there's still some negative. There's still some points of conflict, and of course, world conflicts, even within the Muslim family, right? Different sects, sects within traditions, like within our own tradition. So just to kind of bear that in mind as we go through this. So how do we participate in this religious diversity that is all around us? Tyler Mayfield says, as Christians, we're compelled to respond faithfully to this diversity in conversation with the Bible, which is for us a source of conviction and encouragement. So he makes the point, and is up there on the slide, that engaging in interreligious work does not mean we suspend or set aside what we believe, right? And I'll quote him a little bit later. It says we have to just have an openness to say we don't have all the answers. We know you don't have all the answers. We're all kind of fellow explorers in this adventure called life and faith, right? So we're trying to work together. We don't think we have it all figured out, and we have a measure of confidence that other faith traditions don't have it all figured out as well. So it's really a posture of humility, right? Which I would support. So this is a little small to read here. So the way we read the Bible matters for the way we engage in the pluralistic world around us. For instance, if we understand the book of Genesis, here, Alex, he's going to pay attention, as narrowly focused on primary characters like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and Joseph, we'll miss the larger story and end up with the impression that God only cares about those who are chosen. In fact, the narratives of marginalized biblical characters reveal that God protects and provides for them also. And the three up there, Cain, Ishmael, and Esau. We hear an awful lot more about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. We don't hear as much about Cain, Ishmael, and Esau, except in the negative, right? What did Esau do, right? His brother tricked him for a pot of soup, You know, so we've got his negative view. Cain, of course, killed his brother Abel. Ishmael was not the chosen child, except Ishmael is the chosen child in the Muslim tradition, in the Quran, right? So Mayfield wants us to kind of re-examine these narratives of these marginalized biblical characters and see how God protects and provides for them also, right? The link then being, maybe we, as contemporary Christians, should be aware that God also provides for others outside of the Christian family, right? That's what he's getting at. So he is encouraging, I highlighted it there, a more generous theology of religious diversity, right? So the Christians might be better equipped to authentically love their neighbors of multiple faith traditions, as God loves and has always loved all humanity, you know? And that gets at more of this exclusivistic kind of thinking, you know? I have a phrase, you know, all are welcome, all God's children have a voice in the choir, right? Those of us who sing or play bells, we like that, right? Everyone, all are welcome. We have a wonderful hymn, all are welcome in this place, right? Do we really believe that? Do we really live that out? What are the tension points around living that out? Because there are those, right? We do have some tension around that. So we're going to look at, starting next week, the other brothers, okay? Those who don't get all the emphasis, who don't get all the good press, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and those guys, right? So that way. So how do we encourage this more generous theology of religious diversity in our church, in this church, right? So that we might be better equipped to love our neighbors of multiple faith traditions as God loves them. I had this bit of tension, or another member at Carter Westminster Church, and we went back and forth on it, but she just could not wrap her head around the fact that the God whom we worship is the same God that the Muslims worship. She got the Jews, because, you know, Jesus was a Jew, and so, you know, it's the God of the Old Testament. But she said, well, I don't believe it's the same God. And I said, well, okay, I hear that. When I talk to people who are Muslim, they believe it's the same God, right? If you read in the Quran, has this wonderful line about respect for people of the book, right? Some of you have heard that. So, well, we're the people of the book. Later, Jews were first the people of the book, then we were the people of the book, right? And then around, I guess around the 4th century, the Muslim tradition started to grow. So the most popular woman mentioned in the Quran is Mary, who is the mother of Jesus. Jesus is mentioned in the Quran. So her name was Carolyn. I said, Carolyn, I can't, you know, your beliefs are your beliefs. When you talk to people of the Muslim tradition, they believe it's the same God that we worship. And I mean, I believe that. Others may not have that same understanding. But that's a good point of discussion. But if you can't wrap your head around that, then you probably have a hard time with the more generous theology of religious diversity, right? And these are, you know, fellow Presbyterians. They would be here tonight and they'd argue with me, right? They're not here tonight. But I know some in that parish where I served, and other parishes, I'm sure, you know, of a more conservative bent, if you will, would be afraid, I think, of a more generous theology of religious diversity, you know. And I don't know where we're all at with that. We could have some discussion about that. I'm more for the generous, you know, the generosity side, right? One of our professors at Louisville, the trajectory of Jesus was always for inclusion and welcome, as opposed to, you know, exclusion and exclusivity. So, you know, do we really believe in and live out the truth that God loves and has always loved all humanity? There's a wonderful text I've heard it used here for the words of assurance of pardon from the Psalms. You know, God is good to all God's love is for all that God has made. Well, that's a pretty inclusive word, right? You know, I think that's in Psalm 45. I have to look it up. You know, the Lord is good to all. His mercy extends to all that God has made. You can't get more inclusive than all, right? Yeah.
So let's play devil's advocate.
Oh, look at him.
Hold on.
You know, yeah.
Let's have a little fun. Okay, so if you say that, okay, it's all over,
Yeah.
then why should I invest my time? If everyone's all good, everyone's all open.
I'm not saying everyone's all good. God's love is toward all.
Okay.
God acceptance is toward all, let's
So
say.
then why does my tradition, if my tradition tells me that what I believe is unique or special,
Hmm.
then why should I, like, why should I, you're basically saying, maybe I shouldn't believe that to be true, that it's unique and special. So the devil's advocate might come back
Right.
and say, why be Christian?
Why be Christian? Right. That's probably a pretty solid, good question. I guess my immediate answer would be there are too many benefits for us to be within the family, within a family, right? Whether it's Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist or whatever, all of those different ones. C.S. Lewis has this wonderful image of the world's religion as a big house. And all of us are wandering around the hallways trying to find what door we're going to go in, you know. But you got to pick a door, because go through the door is the room where there's food and other people and drink, you know. You can't stay in the hallway. So I guess I would say to someone like that, it was then explore some others and pick for yourself, right? And because there are positive benefits for us to be part of a community of faith. Which, boy, if it wasn't what I was taught at Grove City College, or my conservative college, or maybe what I wasn't even taught, you know, growing up, to be this open and inclusive. So, yeah. Does that work or no? No.
Yeah, well, I guess so to that end, though, you could say, okay, if we use that analogy from C.S. Lewis that you just brought up, I could come back and I could say, well, there are more and more people who are choosing to stay in the hallway.
That's true,
And
yeah.
they're more than happy to stay in the hallway.
Right, right.
And they actually don't want to be in any of the rooms.
Right, right. And is that a result of more Western individualistic thinking? They don't care to be part of a community, part of a group where there's mutual support and encouragement. And that's probably true for some people. You know, the nuns, right? The NONES is the fastest growing group among us. People who have no religious preference. I wonder if they find a bit of fellowship and support at the local farmers market, like we would find it. You know, Judy and I Judy not anymore, we drive by Sunday morning. There's the hundreds of people there, young families, kids walking with mom and dad to the Mount Prospect farmers market. Say, well, that's a fellowship. People probably know each other and come there. So maybe folks are getting what they need in that kind of a gathering. I don't know. It doesn't work for me as much, but I think it's real for a lot of people. They want to stay in the hallway, you know. Yeah, please.
Don't you think some of it, though, is they see the religions as having restrictions?
Mhm.
And they are tired of being told, you've got to follow this rule or that rule, or
Right,
that's
restrictions.
the way they see it.
Yeah.
You know, I can say in the groups I'm in, we have one thing, we don't proselytize. We want to learn about everybody's religion, and we get along great.
Mhm.
And I think I would be, in some of the Muslim mosques, I would be perfectly fine.
Right.
Some
Others, yeah.
the same, and some of the, I mean, I've been in enough synagogues and all. In the Hindu temple, in the Buddhist what? I think you've got to be open-minded enough and realize God is everywhere. And when you talk to the people of these different religions, they're going to come and describe God the same way you probably see God.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and some of my professors would say, and we should rejoice and be glad when we hear people of other traditions say things that sound very familiar, right, to our tradition, right? And that's a generous stance as opposed to a judgmental stance. You know, you don't have the answers, I've got the answers, right? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yes, please. That guy in the back there, that devil's advocate, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I can come back and I can say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because you could, because I mean, I would say, and you're not wrong, they're picking and choosing, but I would say we're also picking and choosing.
Exactly, right.
Because
Yeah.
Jesus does make some very exclusive statements.
He does, right,
in the
right.
New Testament. I choose not to preach about those fairly often.
Exactly,
But
right,
the truth
right.
is that he does make
Right.
exclusive statements
Right.
to the people around him.
Mhm.
And that's true of us, and we see that in other places in the Bible. So I think in some ways, even though we are part of a tradition that is very open, and I love that, we too are picking and choosing the things that support that point.
Exactly,
And
right.
But the Bible's massive.
The Bible is
So
massive,
you
right.
can really support anything you want to say with the Bible. It's just,
Yeah, that's true. Martin Luther said we all have the canon within the canon, meaning we pick and choose what, be not yoked with unbelievers. Well, I could lift that way up and say, well, anybody who's not, and some churches do, right? Don't be unevenly yoked. You married, well, that's it. You made a big mistake, Laura, because you married outside the faith, right? Yeah.
Grandfather was Protestant, and his wife was Catholic. There were nuns in her family.
Mhm.
And totally ostracized.
Yes, right, yeah. Judy's family, 2 generations back, her grandmother would say the same, I was never accepted, never welcome. And that family, right, right. And so that's the way of Jesus? I don't think so, right? But, yeah, but it's tough, so. Yeah, we all would pick and choose, and I think, we weigh, are all the commandments in the Bible of equal weight? Well, I would say no. Jesus says, go and learn this. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. That's all in the Bible, burnt offerings. But we say knowledge of God, right? Mercy and sacrifice. Sacrifice all over the Bible. We say mercy, right? Women in the Bible. Paul has a lot of negative things about women in the Bible, right? So, women shouldn't speak, shouldn't do. And yet Paul also says in Jesus there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. So we look at those texts and we go, this text has more weight, more say than this text. And we just interpret it that way, right? What we say. So anyway, same I think with this. Well, like anywhere, anybody, can create different names, right? There's all different meanings to names and stuff, hard to know. So just a couple, we got about 4 minutes. So there's a couple quotes I pulled out from later in the book, but after the introduction. So I said this earlier, when we engage in interreligious work, we are not required, and shouldn't be, to set aside our faith commitments and our understanding about God and the world, because we have a particular leaning, a particular bent, a particular tradition, right? Pluralistic, ecumenical, interreligious conversation asks us to articulate with vulnerability, a little bit of openness and courage, those very faith commitments that we have, and to listen humbly and gently to our fellow human beings as they express their beliefs and values, which is a very even, gentle, generous kind of posture, right? It isn't then argumentative. I'm not for argumentative stuff. Rather, what they say there, to listen humbly doesn't mean we're going to accept or agree with or all of a sudden convert to. And I think that's the scary thing, like this woman who had to cross the street, Catholic, walk by the Presbyterian church and then keep going home. Her mother was afraid she might get Protestantism, like it's a disease, Doesn't mean we're going to become that other tradition, but we're open to it. We're secure enough in our belief to say, I'm interested, right? I'm open and vulnerable to what you say. And then we give thanks to God when we hear similarities, right? Gee, that sounds a lot like what Jesus said. That sounds a lot like what Paul said in the Bible, what you're saying, right? That's in your sacred tradition. So it leads us to curious questions about others' beliefs, food, and what do we do, and marriages, and how does all this work, right? We don't have all the answers, neither do other traditions. So Ibu Patel, he's here. He is the director of the Interfaith Youth Corps. He would be great to have as an anniversary speaker if we could ever get him. He probably charges too much money now, but he lives here, so it would be cheap to get him. He's amazing. I've heard he's written several books on this. He's Muslim, written several books on this. He's been at Louisville Seminary 5 times that I remember him there, probably more now. He puts together young people from different faith traditions and puts them on a project and says, go build this house, or go, and then through their work and their sharing, they learn this interreligious work and ecumenism and interfaith work. It's just amazing. Diversity is a fact, right? We have a diverse population. Pluralism takes work, right, to work toward it, and he has some definitions of pluralism. Respect, right? Now that should go both ways, right? I respect your tradition as a Muslim, as a Buddhist, would hope you would respect my tradition as a Christian follower of the way of Jesus, right? Relationships between diverse communities. We want to kind of intermingle, go to the iftar dinner and experience that and have curiosity about, and hopefully others have curiosity about your faith, right? Our faith, right? And that's a good thing. And then a commitment to the common good. And we have that in our vows, We have this wonderful liturgy that those of us who have been pastors a long time, when you have the ordination, installation of elders, there are different gifts, but it is the same Spirit who gives them. So when we're in a bad mood, we say, there are different gifts, but we use this same liturgy every single time we do this, There are different gifts, and all these gifts, we say, are used for the common good. And I would offer the conjecture that we've lost some sensitivity, some desire as a whole society to work toward the common good, right? When you can't even, a young boy can't even ring a doorbell at a wrong house. Oh, sorry, got the wrong house, that you're looking for this neighbor, and he gets shot, right? I mean, the common good, we're just afraid. It's kind of a very sad thing. But, that pluralism is a commitment to the common good of all of the people, all of God's creation, which is made up of all of these various traditions, various ones. So, look at that, we're right at time. So next week, I'm going to do a little bit more about this religious pluralism as theological posture, inclusive, exclusive, pluralistic. Tyler says that's about 3 general groups that folks are in, right? And so we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the chapter 2, Alex will like this, chosenness and Genesis fuller story, right? And then we get a little bit into, he said, reading the Bible expansively, God asks good questions, the story of Cain. We know about Cain and Abel. Does anybody know, just off the top of their heads, not Alex, the rest of the story about Cain? All I remember from Sunday school is Cain killed his brother Abel, and God put a mark on him and get out. But there's more. There's more story about Cain. We kind of skip those parts, right? There's more stuff about Cain, more stuff about Esau, and others, kind of these outside brothers, if you will, to the faith. So, last minute questions, comments, something on your mind you wanted to ask about religious pluralism or diversity or something like that? What's that? Yeah, it's really quite remarkable, right? A lot of it, I think, has to do with the country you grew up in, right? Different traditions within different countries. Yeah, certainly that's true in the Catholic tradition. I mean, in the Christian tradition, right? One's locale, one's growing up tradition, one's a little bit of national identity, certainly in Europe, had a lot to do with whether you were Presbyterian or Catholic or Lutheran, you know, and so on. So really, you know, well, it all started over generations and centuries. There's no definitive word about when it all started, but it's just been around for a long time. All right, friends, let us go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thank you all. We'll see you next week. All right? Same bat time, same bat channel next week. Thank you. Thank you, Jonah.